Hello and welcome. Hi there. We're back with another quilt tutorial because my friend Bree is interested in beginning quilting. We actually discussed it a little bit and she said that anything having to do with jelly roll strips, and specifically 12-inch squares, because if you get a bunch of 12-inch squares together, you can throw them together and end up with a quilt of all sorts of different patterns and styles. This is fabric that I had left over from a quilt top that I did that was in fact the log cabin, which is what I'm going to be doing today, the standard log cabin. Some of them are already cut to size, most of them are not. But you start the standard log cabin the same you do with the modified log cabin. So you start with 2 squares together and run them through, and again I'm lining up. It's not really zoomed in well so you can't see it, but I'm lining up where there's a little gap on the foot there. It's got a larger hole where the needle goes through, and that, if I line up with that, is a scant 1/4 inch. And because one of my other friends, evidently the lack of planning and just pulling any old fabric out caused major anxiety, I'm not going to do that with this one. This is actually going to be semi-planned. So you start with your 2 squares. Again, normally you would press it flat. I'm a lazy butt, so I'm not going to. And then I'm going to go with a solid as the next piece. And it's the same as with the modified. These 2 steps are the same. My phone is acting up. I'm recording on that. I apologize. Hence the wiggly camera. So you do that just the same. And because the size of a jelly roll is a standard 2.5 inch width, these actually come from different jelly roll sets. This was, the pattern fabric was from one set, and the solids are from a completely different. And cut across. Now this is where it's different from the modified. Because with the modified, you would just go 1, 2, 1, 2, right? And just build on 2 sides. But since this is a standard log cabin, we're going to be building on all 4 sides. And I want, if that's my center, or we can make this a center tile, that would actually be a really cool center tile. So we're going to be building up this in this direction, clockwise. So I have 1 pattern, 1 solid. I'm going to want a solid here, so that's going to be my next one. This one looks really good next to the blue-green, so that's what I'm going to use. It's just a solid blue. The needle is lifted. And then trim to size. These ones are not going to be quite as square, but I don't care. I'm not going for absolute perfection. Okay, so now you've got a center tile and 3 walls. So now I want the 4th wall, which I want to be a patterned piece of fabric. And let's see, we've got this one, we've got this one, So I've got a few different things here that it could be. This is slightly different than that, but not quite different enough. And then we've got a couple of these. I think this would be really pretty. So that's going to be the next one. So line that one up and add it. Normally I would be a little bit more of a perfectionist about this. The solids are a little bit stretchy and a little bit odd to work with. So they can skew a little bit. Now all I'm doing is because that edge was coming up under the foot like I had talked about in the previous video, the needle was down in the fabric to hold it in place. I just lifted the foot, flattened it out, and then put the foot down again. Okay, and you trim your threads. I throw it on the floor for Sir Worthington to pick up. Sir Worthington is my new robot vacuum. The closest thing to a pet I'll have for a long while. Sir Worthington, the devourer of dust bunnies and nibbler of cords. So now you've got your floor tile, and then you've built 4 walls around it. And then you continue building the walls. So on this side, I'll need another pattern. I did say that this pattern was a little bit too close to that for my liking, so I'm going to go with this more yellow one, all from the same set again. And I'm going to attach it here. Corner's a little bit scrunched because I've had it sitting in storage for a hot minute. This is one because the log cabin is just straight stitching down the edges and cutting the squares or rectangles to the proper length. I was actually doing the finished project that involved these fabrics. I was doing by hand while working in a call center on site. Before working from home because of COVID was a thing that happened. So these have been sitting for a bit. They're wrinkly, they're weird. They still work. Alright, so there's your second layer of the first wall. And then we need a solid. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. There will be 4. 5 and 5, 6 and 6, and that will end up being a 12-inch square. But we will need a solid for here. Let's go with this one because that goes well with both of these. I have that one, and I have that one. I don't like this one as much. You know what? I'm going to use it. I'm going to use this one. One, because I know I've got enough to go down that whole length, and 2, because that little bit of an edge where they're meeting is going to be better than that whole big long strip on the side. Shadows, I promise this is actually going to make more sense. It's not completely random. Not like the last one. I promise you. I promise you, my friend. And again, being careful to line the edges up. The solids are also a much cheaper fabric. You can see they're all raveling on the edges and everything else. Okay. There we go. And now this other blue, this lighter blue. Come. I'm going to put as the walls. Do weird shit you learn. Having a bit of a problem with the corner because, again, this fabric has been in storage for a couple of years. And I should have ironed it, and I didn't. That's on me. Don't do that, kids. Don't be me, kids. Do your due diligence. Do the actual work. Save yourself time and energy. Don't be me. All sorts of weird threads everywhere. Oh Lord. Stuck in Lodi again. Now, you may have noticed, and I don't know if you did or not, but I'm telling you anyway. That when I'm doing the back side, one set of seams is going this direction and the other set is going this direction every time I stitch something down, and it's because of this center square. You just always want to push it out from the center square. Out, out, out. It doesn't matter what direction. Just out, 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 out. And that will help everything lay nice and flat and neat and pretty once everything's done. Alright. So now we've got our center. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, so I need a pattern piece across there. It's going to be this green. And then it'll be nice and square again. If I can line it up correctly. Let's go, come on. There you are, thank you. Alright. Perfect, let's go. It's slightly less than perfect, that's okay. Go. Thank you. Trim the threads. Cut it square. Right, now when we look at it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need one more wall here, a patterned one, and one more wall here, a solid one, and that'll be our block. But if you look at it, even though it looked to be really random how I was picking things out, you notice that all the light colors and patterned colors are on this side and all the solid darker colors are on this side. There's a reason for that. Or this one, which is different from all the other ones. Well, it's the same as this one, but it's far enough away that I think it'll be okay. It's very, very wrinkly because it was at the bottom of the pile of everything, but it's gonna get used anyway. I'll see if I can, at the end of this, add in a couple of photos from when I was laying out the quilt top that I actually finished. And we'll show you why it makes sense. And why it was actually very much a planned thing, even though it may not look like it immediately. Falling fabric. Alright. And then the one here, which I think I could do the green again, absolutely. Or I could do this blue again, which I think would look better. So I'm going to do that blue. Just a personal thing, but I actually really don't like working with these solids. They're just really flimsy. I had gotten them like a 70% off sale or something, and I now know why they were 70% off. There's a reason they were on sale. I would try not to put myself through that again. Yeah. They're also not standard quilter's cotton. So, right. Problems, problems. What are you doing, thread? You shouldn't be in there. Let me scoot that out of the way. And that is a standard log cabin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which at each of these squares, these two outer edges are 2 1/4 inches wide, because you've got the 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's why the strips, jelly roll strips, are 2.5 inches wide. So that when you do the stitching and you take the 1/4 inch seam allowance off of each side, they're 2 inches wide. It's an easy way to measure your quilt squares. So if you count each width, that's 2 inches. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And you've got a 12 by 12 block sitting here. Hey.
Hi everybody! Since I couldn't figure out how to put just a static image on the video and be able to talk over it, I moved over to my desktop instead of being on the phone and over by the sewing machine so that I could do this and show you what I meant by actually planning out the blocks and doing a better job than what I was doing when I was doing the demonstration. The demonstration was actually not quite as planned as I like to do with a log cabin. And it's because if you plan very carefully and you have, like you can see in the image up on the screen here, here, this side, you can see that I picked one fabric for the center square and then a different fabric for the two walls, and then a different fabric for these two walls, and these two walls, and these two walls, and so on and so forth, until the block was completed. And to be able to do that, you need to start with either, based on what I was doing in the demonstration, either a solid or a print as the center. And then the next wall should be the opposite, so that there would be two walls of solid. If I started with a print, it would be two walls of solid, and then two walls of a print, etc., etc. And you can see that actually looking at these blocks as we're going through it. But then I went and I was laying out, trying to get an idea of what the quilt would look like once it was completed. And these three photos are all the same blocks, the exact same blocks, just laid out in different ways. Please ignore the mess that was my bedroom at the time, because I'm very not good at housekeeping, and I openly admit it. Like, I legit bought myself a robot vacuum. It came in yesterday. I think it was yesterday, day before. And he has already been dubbed Sir Worthington, the devourer of dust bunnies and nibbler of cords, and has been doing an amazing job. And I don't think my floors have been cleaner in like 5 years, just because it's difficult. I But this was the first layout, and if I recall correctly, because I no longer have this quilt, it was a gift. So if I recall correctly, this is actually the layout that I ended up going with in the end. But just picking up the blocks and turning some of them and laying them slightly differently gave me this. Exact same blocks. Like if you go back and forth between the two pictures on the far right corner, down, like this way, if you're looking at the picture, it's got the two different blues, and then it's got like the birds and stuff if you look in the fabric really closely. It's the four blocks just turned on their sides, so that the blue is on the inside instead of the outside. That's legitimately the only difference. It's just turning some of those sideways. And you end up with a completely different looking quilt. The third option that I had, exact same blocks. I think the third photo I had made more of them, so more of it was covered. But that was my third option. Exact same blocks, exact same pattern, but just by planning which fabrics were being paired together and went where, and by turning the blocks in different directions, I got all three of those. There's also a way that you could do, and I didn't take a picture of it, but it had like the cross in the middle, and then a diamond of the lighter color, the pattern fabrics, and then around that a border of the solids, and then another of the lighter, and it just kind of went out from the center. I personally didn't like that because that means you actually have to center the medallion on the bed, and fuck that noise. God, no. I'm not going to do that shit. I'm too lazy. I'm too fucking lazy for that shit. Uh, but yeah, so if you just plan a little bit and think about the possibilities of what you might want to do with some of these blocks, that's what you end up with, is you end up with this explosion of possibilities of just laying them down in different ways and different patterns and turning them and holding them up against each other and seeing what you like.